So now we're up for another panel here on stage with some top-notch guests discussing the current state of mobile marketing. And this discussion will be conducted by Michael Paxman, who leads the customer service office who's a customer service officer at the Adjust office in Tokyo. Research officer. Okay. Here we go. The stage is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? Are we doing well? Yeah. All right. Stop. No more drinks for her. My name is Mike Paxman. I used to work in customer services. I now work in Adjust's research department, finding out what it is that you want. And it turns out what you want is us talking about bullshit. So that's what we're going to do today. Bullshit is something we all deal with in our lives. Miracle diet pills. Bullshit. I tried them. Doesn't work. Delicious sushi restaurants in Berlin. Bullshit. It doesn't exist. The President of the United States understands the situation. It's bullshit. It doesn't happen. And it pains me, it saddens me to say that in the mobile marketing arena, there is some bullshit as well. If you've met the Adjust sales team, you know what I'm talking about. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Whoa, a lot of Nico and Fabian's families are here today, all right. I have assembled 4 of the greatest bullshitters in anti-bullshitters in mobile marketing to join with me today to discuss this terrifying and upsetting issue. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage the men whose names are on this screen. Okay, gentlemen, choose your favorite seat, the one that calls to you deep in your soul. Excellent. And please choose a microphone as well. Only one of them is poisoned. All right, guys. So I would like to kick off because some of these people may not know who you are or who let you in. So I'd like to start over there, as far away from me as possible. If you could tell us who you are, what you do, and one of the juiciest slices of bullshit that you've heard recently in your marketing life.
Okay, sure. Hold it back. So, yeah, hi guys. My name is Jonathan. I work for Miniclip. I'm the head of user acquisition there. And I quite recently had a lot of messages on LinkedIn, those famous sales pitches you get on LinkedIn. I have to grab my phone, actually, just to read it out to you guys, because I thought that was a good BS message. So, hi Jonathan, nice to meet you. Are you interested in expanding your user engagements with 100% worldwide, high quality, clean traffic? And now hold on to your seats. 0% fraud and risk. I was like,
they've solved it.
Yeah, exactly.
Andreas, mate, cancel all the workshops. It's done. We fixed it.
I always signed, all good. Yeah.
Were you interested?
Yeah. No.
Great. Fantastic sales pitch there. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Round of applause for my first panelist over there, Sebastian. All right. Up next. Let's move along.
Hi, I'm next. Hi, it's loud. My name is Michel, and I'm leading the acquisition team for Funstage, a beautiful company in beautiful Vienna. And yeah, I have to take my phone out because it's pretty much what Jonathan had. It was quite some time ago, a very funny experience, and it goes something like this. It's just an extraction of the conversation I had with a potential client, and it goes something like, so I'd like to ask you something before we move forward. Network, ask me anything as we're moving forward, for sure. How do you guys deal with fraud? Network, we don't. What do you mean? We don't have fraud. You mean to say you never worked with fraudulent publishers generating bad traffic or invalid traffic? Nope. And me, how come? Because we're awesome. We work with gaming company ABC, and they're super happy with us. Me, okay, ...
Wow. What does Andreas do? What does our fraud suite do at this point? They've solved it. Problem solved.
Absolutely. Yeah,
easy peasy.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with fraud, technically you don't have any. Good stuff. Any networks here don't have any fraud? Yeah, just buy all their stuff, guys. Problem solved. All right, let's keep moving around. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marcel. I'm a UA lead at Ubisoft Mobile. My stories are not as good as theirs because usually the bullshit I just deleted, but I got one email this week and I said, okay, I'm going to use this one. It starts with, hi Marcel, okay, this is fine. Sometimes you actually get an email without your name or with the wrong name, so we started pretty good. My name is whatever, I represent whichever company, and we're a data-driven digital agency. To which I stopped reading because, well, it's 2018, and if your USP is that you're data-driven, there's something wrong there, or there's something shady, so.
But were they data-driven?
Oh, I don't know, I didn't reply.
I don't know.
I can try. I'll
Yeah,
let you know.
find out for us.
Yeah.
Next time we'll do a live email exchange with one of them. No, we won't. No, we get in a lot of trouble. All right, let's move round to my final panelist.
Hello, I'm Sebastian, working for Innogames, actually leading the UA through ad networks. So, of course, I also get a lot of these mails. Haven't prepared any mail yet, but I just got this week a nice sales deck, and the first sentence was like, this company considered himself like a people-based marketing engine. So this is maybe the
like they feed people into the engine.
I would say it's just 4 words for agency or something.
Anything for users, eh?
And the other nice row of bullshit words we had, but it's already kind of a few years ago, was a prepayment CPM model for pop-unders. That was really the worst thing I ever heard.
Such a convenient way to buy fraud. Handy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to ask for a round of applause for number 2, 3, and 4 here, and I don't want Sebastian to think he's special. So please clap only for these 3 gentlemen. Excellent. All right. Now they won't fight on the drive home. Okay, we are going to be looking at different elements, different areas of the mobile marketing experience. And we all like bitching, we all like making fun. So we'll do a bit of that, but we're also going to try and keep it proactive. And I'm going to be pushing you guys to not only tell me what the BS is, but also how you can cut through it, how you can get it out of your inbox and have a more healthy and BS-free mobile life. Sound good? Excellent. Okay, so let's kick off with the sales pitch. All right? It's time to buy some inventory. Everyone's excited. And when it comes to the selling of inventory, I feel that networks tend to push 2 particular features. One would be functionality, promises of functionality, and the other would be promises of delivery. So let's start with functionality claims. When you're being told what a network can and can't do, or what an inventory can and can't do, what are some promises or some terms that set off the BS detector in your head? Anyone?
Okay, I'm just going to start, sorry. What I find very interesting with the sales emails you're getting from various different networks, even networks you haven't heard of, there are so many companies out there. They are really trying hard to identify themselves as something special and unique. However, they use these buzzwords, and this is where I pay a lot of attention to, like machine learning, sophisticated algorithm or people-based engine. They try to have this beauty of terms around in this email to sound very professional. And this just raises a flag because you need to really be careful with what they are actually talking about. Maybe they're just hiding something. Maybe they're trying to rephrase something. For example, the term affiliate network has such a negative connotation. So instead of saying, oh, we are affiliate network, they will try to rebrand themselves as something completely weird, or they try to rebrand themselves as a DSP, for example. Automated DSP with direct publishers.
Sure.
Right? So something very convoluted.
And anyone else, sorry?
I also like the sentence, if a salesperson approaches you and they start, we are one of the leading mobile ad networks and you've never heard of them. So it's really, so many really start with those sentences. And I mean, we all know, I think, how easy it is to just found an ad network. You just need 1 or 2 people, buy all the traffic from the good guys, and then sell it for with a little bit on margin on top, and that's an ad network in their perspective, I think.
What are some terms or some things, and I'm not trying to help the marketers with us here today, but what are some things that they could say that in contrast to this would make you more interested and more likely to sort of get involved with their product? Are there particular promises, particularly when it comes to functionality, where you think, wow, this is something that I want?
I think an own SDK is already a big pro. If they really have their own SDK and have this SDK in a lot of publishers, because what we also found out is that, or had a lot of times, they have an SDK, but it seems like they just have it because they need to have one. But if you then ask them how much traffic you actually deliver through your SDK, and which, or how is the percentage of the other traffic, then it's 5% SDK traffic, and that is already a bad sign then.
Sure.
But SDK is definitely a big plus.
Now, I was talking to Sebastian before the panel the other day, and you were telling me that you have a questionnaire that you sent. And by you, of course, I meant Jonathan. You told me...
He actually asked us beforehand that we
that was
should
some
actually
bullshit, ladies and gentlemen,
sit down underneath our names, and we totally messed it up.
Order, dear me. And you were telling me that you have a questionnaire that you send out to potential new partners. What are some of the sort of key questions that you ask in that questionnaire?
First question is, do you have an SDK?
Yeah.
So if they have an API integration or something else, that's already a bad sign. Then we ask when exactly they fire a click, because this could help us to understand if we see higher amounts of click, where is it coming from? Other sites. You also all read the question. I can't remember all my questions I had on there.
What I also find very interesting when you talk to new partners or potential UI partners is if you just ask them about your own product. I mean, they pitch to you and they want your business. And sometimes I like to ask them, so what do you know about us? So what do you think of our product? What do you think of our game or our app? And then sometimes, it happened to me at least, in the conversation they would say, oh, yeah, I like the game that you have.
The game that you have?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I know you're really proud of that.
I played, I looked at it, So then you suddenly reveal, actually, they have no idea who they're approaching, which is very, very, frustrating, because obviously there's a lot of commitment that goes into these kind of partnerships, and you expect that level. And so this is also the type of bullshit that people are trying to sell you something without investing into, like, just knowing you as a business.
The most hilarious part is that they actually claim that you will have an ROI of up to 400% on day 30, which is actually something, especially if you ask them like what your game is or what your product is, like as if they actually were our data analyst or if they knew the product inside out, right? So it's like claiming that somebody's going to give you LTVs or ROIs of whatever. It's actually very subjective and it's actually not real because ROI and LTV are something very complex. And I quite recently had a company because the industry is moving towards automation and creative optimization, et cetera, et cetera. So now every agency that used to do UA now is doing creatives, right? So that's very convenient. And all of a sudden I got this agency telling me, our creatives based on the work we have with your competitors will give you up to 400% ROI. I was thinking a creative will give me 400% ROI. That's quite interesting. Yeah. Then I buy all creatives, right?
I assume you just bought it without asking any more questions. That's a good deal.
I think anytime you see like a percentage on an email or a sales pitch, that's a red flag. That's like, how can you promise something if you don't know anything about our app? You don't know how it's performing. Like, how can you promise you're going to get us like 100% ROI?
Is it quite a common claim that you see?
Yeah.
And they're just, I mean, it's from a
random
number
like they
generation,
claim
really, isn't
to
it?
bring profitable UA campaigns. And you're like,
so there you go. If you see a percentage, run away. Good advice. Are there any other questions, any other things you ask in this process when you're still checking them out, feeling them out?
We also have in our questionnaire the share, of course, of iOS and Android, and especially the share of gaming and utility apps they have in their inventory. And if they say their main focus is Android and utility, you should definitely stop the conversation.
No offense to any Android utility developers here today. We're trying to be nice.
But we just know that the biggest share of click injection or click spamming fraud is unfortunately coming from utility apps. We also know that there are a few good ones, but it's super hard to catch them. And if they promise you really big volumes, the chances of getting this fraud is pretty high.
Marta, any other questions from you for the
yeah,
potential
it comes
partners?
always about transparency. Like, do they share app IDs or like developer IDs or publisher names, even with signing NDAs? Because we sign NDAs with all our networks so that we can actually see where our traffic is coming from. But some networks actually tell you no, they can't. So that's something which is quite dodgy because what are you hiding?
Yeah.
If you don't want to share that, you're probably hiding something, and that's definitely not true.
Sure. Cool. So we found our partner, we found our network. We're very happy. They're cool guys. The campaign is now running, and numbers are appearing on your beautiful Adjust dashboard. Wow, exciting stuff. And maybe they're not the numbers you wanted to see. Or maybe they are the numbers you wanted to see, but it's not the numbers that your partner promised you. At this point, you're going to have some back and forth with your advertising partners. What are some of the attempts you've seen to bullshit you on the numbers or that sort of thing when it comes to like starting to analyze the campaign?
So I remember in the early days that when we were getting a lot of clicks and actually no conversions, that was of course a red flag. And I would actually go back to the account manager and they will be like, yeah, we're just testing multiple sources, right? And of course, there was no like real fraud prevention, and we didn't know there was something like click spamming or something like that. So actually, you dig down into data, and you realize that they actually were testing 2 publishers, and then one of them was just bringing 1 million clicks in 2 days. So that's basically one of the things they will tell you that no, we're just testing, and we're good. It looks normal, it looks healthy for you and for your vertical. And then they don't follow up. And then you actually try to get back to them, and they just come out with the lamest excuses ever. And
what are some of these excuses, though, that you hear?
Well, like, basically, they will come back to you and say, like, no, like, our system is kind of learning, and it goes back to machine learning, by the way. Yeah. And it's kind of like the algorithm is learning, so it will take time for us to get it. And then they will be like, oh, we were, I don't know, holidays for 2 days. I don't know, just anything, basically.
We need a 2-week test phase.
Yeah. Classic.
The machine was on holiday. Yeah, 2 weeks. Thanks, German law.
No, but this is like this point is when before signing the IO and starting the campaign, you usually get like daily emails from the sales guy or girl. They're really into you, and then when things go wrong, it's when you start not getting replies to your emails. It's like, oh, look, it's been 2 days and I still have no answer, so there's something going on there.
I mean, we also have had the same stuff because the sales guys are very often promising you so many things, and you then, once you sign everything, you then move on to the accounting team, and then they finally kind of tell you the truth. Because beforehand we were just telling them, yeah, we would only run to your owned SDK traffic. Is it a problem? No, we have millions of publishers and impressions, no problem. And then you want to start the campaign, and they said, yeah, but our own SDK traffic is so low that it brings nothing. And that is what you actually find out that
you're not bidding enough.
Yeah, you gotta. Ooh, a little bit of a pain laugh from the audience there. Sebastian, you had a particular quote for this about your LTV. You should really have
did it on
this
purpose.
order. Really emotionally invested in my panel today. You had a quote about your LTV.
Yeah, we had one network where we were told them, yeah, our main KPI, of course, is the lifetime value. So that is most important for us because this ends up in ROI at the end. And then the account manager was asking, we asked him to please pause publishers which only produce clicks but no installs at all. But then we just found out after a while that he hadn't done it because he was asking, yeah, please, I thought you want to check the LTV first of these clicks without installs. And then we had to tell him, no install, most likely means also no LTV. But that is when you sometimes realize, okay, we're really talking about, or we're talking a different language at all. So
yeah, if you're checking the LTV of 0 users, things aren't looking up. Now, we talked about account managers a little bit there, and I was an account manager. I'm a recovering account manager. And it's very tricky to, I believe, find a good account manager who is, investing in you and so on. When you are looking at your different partners' account managers, what kind of traits do and don't you want in your dream account manager that you want to run away and start a new life with? What are some things they could tell you, some things how they make themselves available, things like this?
I think what is really important for us is proactivity. If we really see that also the account manager is really caring about the campaigns, also want to propose you new ideas, new strategies, maybe to scale up, find some special CPIs for whitelisting some publishers, that is really a pro. And of course, if they are not replying or you have to wait 1 week for another mail, that is of course then.
Yeah, actually also in quality, like many times, the account manager might see that the quality is dropping, right, of the users, and then they will actually suggest, make some changes, maybe, refresh creatives, or actually just some kind of like, action plan on what to do. And of course, communication is key as well, to being able to reach someone quickly and not after a 2 weeks, 3 weeks vacation, right? That's
I mean,
crucial.
even if they pause some publishers in a short time, of course, this will kind of cut their revenues from that time, but on the long term, it will, of course, keep the revenue up because you just have a very good and long partnership. And we just saw really, if we have really good account managers, very often also the campaigns are running really well.
So it all kind of connects with the honesty, right? So I actually really appreciate it if a network partner, let's say it's a test campaign, new partner, they promise a lot, and in the first 2 weeks they don't hit the benchmarks. I actually prefer it if they come back to me and say, look, I think something went wrong. We need to check and investigate. We're really sorry. Let's work on that. Instead of the excuses around, you know, trying to figure out an exit out of this whole misery. You know, I just prefer that way more than just any like cheap excuse.
Because it's quite obvious, right, that it didn't work. I mean, we're not dumb. I mean, we see it, like KPIs are not there, so.
Are there any particular lines that you've been fed to sort of, particularly if you're looking at numbers on a third-party tracking system? I mean, I've been thrown under the bus before. Have you ever had anything like sort of, oh, it might be a Just's fault, or it might be a tracking issue?
Yes, a lot. Yeah. So especially when you go into the fraud direction, like the fraud prevention tool, you say, oh, no, that's wrong. They don't really get that right, and they reject too much. There's actually legit traffic there. Or when it comes to the installs and conversion numbers, there's also a lot of arguing around. Or actually, you're not tracking all the installs because there's something wrong with the tracking, or you know, or what is your view through attribution window? What is only 1 hour or 24 hours? Why not 7 days, right? So you have these conversations all of a sudden. They try to kind of point at something on your side to just distract from their own mistakes or from their own, you know, failure in the end here.
Yeah, one common one is like, you know, you're not sharing enough data with us, or that's a classic one actually. So we don't know what your, you know, progression is, your journey is, the user journey basically. So we cannot optimize on that, you know, it's your fault. And it even happens to the big guys, you know, we actually, you know, we integrate with them through an MMP or directly, you know, and, you know, they just say basically the algorithm is not working because you're not feeding it right, or you're not giving it the right food, so to speak, right?
Yeah, put the right humans into the machine, right? Help it learn. Yeah, okay, so when we're talking about this sort of back and forth with the networks and we're talking about numbers, would you agree then that it's better for them to sort of own their losses and admit they're not perfect and give insight into that over sort of make bigger promises next time? Yeah. You made a really good point earlier where you said that it's very much a sort of short-term strategy of theirs to ignore the problems. Because, you know, if once you guys get sick of them, we're done, right? And you only get so many second chances. How often do you see partners take that strategy of the short-term win over a more long-term partnership building?
I think one thing we also have to mention now, there are also very good networks out there. So we're only talking about like the negative examples here.
Of course.
And for all the good ones, they are very often very honest, transparent, and there you really, it's enjoyable to work with them. You can really do something. But it's very often I would say really smaller ones, maybe just founded a couple of months, half a year ago, and then they always try to run on work on the short-term goals and argue a lot about fraud or not fraud.
And you never know, as a UA manager, you never know what is their agenda. You never know that. It's always, even with the good guys, you'd never know if you talk to the UA partner, what's happening on their side internally. What are the goals that they have? You know, an account manager has their own interest as well, right? They have some goals to hit and something like that. That can drive certain decisions in the wrong direction without you knowing at all. And when it comes to the short-term partnerships that you mentioned, from my experience, I find a lot from specific types of UA partners, not necessarily the SDK networks that are usually, or the established networks, for example, they usually come into your conversation saying, look guys, we want to really build something big here. We want to work very closely with you. You can tell by just how the conversation goes, how invested they are in your company as well, in your interest, right?
I think when it comes to honesty, many networks think that if a test goes wrong, that's the last chance that they have to work with us. Whereas that is not really the case. So if I test one network and it doesn't go well, if they're being honest, if they're being actually transparent about what happened and why it happened, then I might try it for another game. Maybe it's a different vertical. Maybe it could actually work out. But if they bullshit me, then I'm definitely not going to try it again. So
is it like and no one likes being lied to, right? My boss said I looked good this morning. Didn't appreciate that. Is it a one and done thing? If somebody kind of, how should we say this, massages the situation. Ooh, that sounded weird, never mind. If somebody does something weird and isn't straight up with you, are you done? Is that it?
I would say almost, really, because really honesty is a big thing. Because, I mean, fraud can happen on a lower scale, but if they're just honest and even, I would say, sometimes thankful, because if we tell them, look, this publisher is also tricking you, it's kind of stealing money from both of us, the good partners are very often also super helpful. Say, thanks, we just removed them from our network. If you see something else, please tell us. But, I mean, the others who are really delivering 90%, 100% fraud, I think we all agree that they know about that. It can't be that it's they never heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
I have one case where I actually knew more people in this network, and so account management is super important. I guess you guys, this is super crucial for whatever success you're trying to build there. And what happened is that I go to this other employee there, a person I knew, and I say like, he or she just giving me a lot of BS, right? And I can't take it anymore. So you either help me out or you kind of like do something there, because it looks like your product is promising, but I'm not getting the support that I need and the reality I need, right? So at the end of the day, we worked it out, and actually we had a nice partnership eventually. But it's very rare.
What a beautiful story.
Oh, I have to be positive. Someone has to be positive.
Did you get a new account manager, or?
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So
no, I can only agree to all of that.
Yeah. So it's a one and done thing, one line of spicy bullshit, and you guys are out. Cool. Write that down, everybody. Okay, we talked a lot about various different elements. One of the things that keeps coming up is fraud, right? And fraud is a kind of awkward thing to talk about. It's something that's omnipresent. It's something that continues to change. And I would say, and I think most people would agree, it is arguably the biggest challenge facing a lot of marketers today. And obviously, there is also a knowledge gap a lot of the time, right? And I think a lot of publications, a lot of people have done a marvelous job of spinning some primo gold string bullshit about fraud. When it comes to fraud, when it comes to dealing with it in your apps and in your scenarios and situations, what are, just like with the pitch, what are some terms, what are some things that you hear or that you read and you immediately start, the bullshit siren starts whirring?
Trusted publisher. It's a trusted publisher, so it's fine.
So if it's not a trusted publisher, you're just not going there?
Sometimes it's clearly fraud. You can see like the source is clearly fraudulent, but you go back to the networks and they're like, no, but this is a trusted publisher. It's completely fine. But
oh, sorry. So the term trusted publisher is a big problem.
Yeah, it usually is, because if they're not transparent, you have to trust that it's a trusted publisher, whereas your numbers are clearly fraud.
So in that case, that would be like a big red. That would be it for the network, yeah?
So I mean, I would reply them telling them, yeah, I'm okay. It's a trusted publisher, but I'm still not paying for that traffic.
Sure. Okay.
And in the same lines, it's also about like direct publishers. They always sell like direct publishers are the good publishers because they are direct.
Ah.
But what does it even mean? Like, it doesn't mean anything really. And that's also a red flag where you need to pay attention to, okay, this direct publisher could also still do something dodgy. And like Sebastian already mentioned, when it comes to the whole topic of fraud, those UA networks or partners can be the victims themselves, right? We need to be fair. We need to look at it from a more like landscape view. There's so many bad actors, but not everyone who is, maybe delivering the bad stuff to you is one of those bad actors, right? And it's very important to differentiate, and as well as when we're talking about honesty, the communication that you have, to keep that in mind, or not suddenly jump on a blame train and just have this big discussions around all the details, and at the end you find out those bad actors are hidden away beyond like some curtains.
So when it comes to choosing a publisher, a partner, what are some fraud approaches that they should be doing and should be telling you guys about?
Wait, what?
As in, what are the sort of, if you ask them about fraud, what are some of the things that they tell you they do that makes your heart happy?
I think there's nothing which can make you happy before you actually see the stats, because nowadays they have in every sales pitch they have something about fraud, how they detect fraud. With such big tools they detect fraud, but at the end they still deliver fraud. So this means nothing. If they at least understand I would say the biggest types of fraud and how they are, what are the main KPIs for this. So if they tell you, yeah, our average conversion rate is somewhere at 0.01, that is something you should not say, because you most likely know that this is some click fraud. But if they at least have a basic understanding of the most common fraud types out there and how to detect them, that is already, I think, a big plus.
And there's always a big confusion between, fraud and quality, because many times we think that, they are somehow interlaced, but it's not actually the same thing. Because many of them will say like, yeah, it's actually machine learning and the algorithm is actually assigning the best publishers because based on your vertical affinities, values, etc. So that's a different story. And I guess once they say this, you're talking about algorithm towards quality, not towards fraud. Fraud is a different topic. So, for fraud prevention, they definitely have to be, more concrete on the actual, actions they're actually taking and the integrations they have with them, like Sebastian mentioned as well. So that's super important.
And maybe also kind of jumping back to the questionnaire tip we gave earlier, it's also a good question to ask them, how do they define the specific fraud types? Just ask them, so what do you think is click spamming? What is click injection? Without giving them your definition. If they come back and they tell you something that does not align with what you actually expect from them, then you have to clarify, define, and have the same baseline. Because otherwise you run into some issues arguing what is fraud, right? There's a clear definition here which we need to agree on between all these partnerships.
And it's when honesty kicks in, right? So for example, if they say something like, I'm gonna go back to my tech guys because I don't really know, that's honesty, right?
Yeah.
If the salespeople don't know, I understand they don't know, but at least they're doing something towards finding out.
I think what's also important, what we just didn't mention, of course, the advertisers, so ourselves, we also have to be honest with the network, because I could also imagine that, I can at least say we don't do that, if an account manager on the advertiser side just sees a super bad performance and then tries to claim a little bit of fraud with the ad network, of course, this is also nothing that is then bullshitting the other way around. So
yeah, this is something I wanted to go into a little bit. We do have a lot of BS from one side, but our behavior and the way that we do our business can feed into the bullshit machine itself. What are some, and please don't incriminate your own companies or yourselves. Adjust is not hiring, so you guys will leave here with that. No, I'm kidding. What are some behaviors or some things that you can do or that we can do, our lovely friends here today, to reduce overall BS in the mobile atmosphere?
Well, first of all, be aware of the issue, and pay a lot of attention to what's happening in the industry, and try to learn from others as well. People all the UA professionals here, we can at an event like this, we can talk to each other about all these different types of frauds and what to look for. Have you heard about these guys? Have you heard about those guys? What was your experience? Obviously, always keeping in mind how much you can reveal from your own UA campaigns, obviously. But the learning aspect is very important. And then be honest with yourself that you don't intentionally work with fraudulent networks just so that you can look good in front of your stakeholders in your company.
Sure.
So there might be a knowledge gap internally, so your bosses or your CEO, they actually don't know what exactly is happening in your UA portfolio, what kind of traffic you're getting, and you may just think as a fraudulent advertiser, yeah, I'm just going to buy from all these fraudsters because the numbers look really good, but it's actually just organic poaching that makes your ROI look amazing, and you get your bonus, and everyone is happy. But what happens then is you finance the fraudsters that then attack honest advertisers like us, right? And that's this cycle that we need to just break with the honesty of an advertiser.
Yeah, but there's also the problem that some UA managers have volume goals, and that is completely legit. So these guys actually don't care or what happens after the install, because the only metric that they're going to look at is the number of installs. So if they're actually buying fraud, bots, whatever, they don't care. So they're, again, feeding back into the system, making money for these fraudulent sources, and then it's us who end up suffering. So there's a problem, and I don't know what the solution could be for that.
And even, I mean, we also see that if you found out a few of these fraud apps, you also see once you just run them on big scale, they use the money they earned with you guys to also advertise their own apps. So it's actually increasing the whole fraud inventory as well then.
The circle of bullshit life continues, like in The Lion King. Would you agree then that perhaps it's a mistake from your company's, or everyone here's company's side, to look at install numbers, and instead we should be looking at health of the users or some other performance metrics to pull away from the sort of emphasis on big numbers?
Well, the most important thing is to define your objectives as a company and as a product. So working with product owners and your CRM guys, and just making sure that whatever you're doing or whatever you're acquiring is actually going to contribute to the overall growth. I mean, this is a crucial thing, and I guess everyone knows this is basic homework, right? Yeah. So if your objective is volumes, and that's dictated by your product owners, I mean, fine, that's okay, right? But then you as a UA manager are not responsible for anything, You as a UA manager are responsible to find, I believe, legit and transparent channels that will bring new users, and whatever happens afterwards, that really depends on the whole company objective and the whole company goal. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I personally think that it's important to analyze all this data, but once again, it depends.
Yeah, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's also super important to educate all the UA managers that you have, that they really know about fraud. And I really think that the biggest two things are the knowledge about the technology and honesty, because there are even tricks to go around the super smart adjust filters if you just have.
It can't be done.
Should I tell that? I don't know.
No, absolutely not.
But of course, we already saw like ad networks where every publisher just had one install, and I think the fraud filter just starts after a given amount of installs to define fraud. And of course, if every publisher only have one install, it's never gonna get detected. And if you ask them the network, and they tell you, yeah, they just have so many different publishers and placements, each with one install, it's like, yeah.
What are the chances, right? Yeah. What are the chances?
And just one note also on the quality of your UA campaigns in general. I think some sort of verification of placement becomes more relevant going forward as well. So it is common practice that you work with blind networks, or it used to be at least, and more UA managers are now switching over to those more transparent networks or channels in general. If you run a campaign, you want to understand what the user journey is. But if you don't understand where's actually my ad landing, where is it? And we were talking about, I mean, it's just not just fraud, but actually the user environment. You find yourself running campaigns on very dodgy mobile websites or apps. You want to understand all of this. So it's not just the quality beyond the install, but it's also the quality just before the install happens, what's happening there. So you may want to get all your installs, that's fair, but there are two parts, the before and after a user joins your app or game.
I think that's why it's so important that every UA manager completely understands the whole funnel from impression until the monetization or whatever, because as I just said, this example was just one install per publisher. You cannot then totally rely on the fraud filters. You always have to ask yourself, does that make sense what I see there? I think Andreas always from Adjust always has some examples with super low conversion rates. And if you really calculate what would that mean in terms of impressions, if you come up with a average click-through rate and that conversion rate that you see, that you would at the end nearly target or have impressions with the size of the whole world population, which makes no sense at the end. So that's really, it's, yeah.
I guess one thing that Jonathan was mentioning before is that we understand the glossary of BS. So what's BS and what is reality? So, things like machine learning, programmatic, a blockchain, this kind of stuff. I mean, it sounds nice, and a lot of people are doing it, but if a company comes to you saying, I offer you a product that has all of these different things into one, it's like, I mean, yeah, but then I don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. We all lose our jobs to machines, basically, that's it. And
great.
The algorithm will optimize itself.
Exactly.
You just have to trust it.
Yeah. No more account managers.
Okay, that was quite a depressing point. Before we're all replaced by our new robotic overlords, I have some terms, as you just mentioned there, that we sort of bandy about, and a few of them have already come up on this panel. I'm not saying that you're talking bullshit, but I have a couple of terms. I want to know if you feel there's any value to them, or if this is just some primo nonsense, all right? The first one, and possibly the sexiest word you can say in downtown San Francisco right now, is blockchain. Does that mean anything to you guys?
I
mean, the word means something, but in a sales pitch, does that make you excited?
No. I think it's a nice concept which might be interesting in, I don't know, a few years, but right now it's just a concept. It's just, and as we just said, honesty is very, 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 very important for us. But of course, if all the ad networks then would kind of to switch also and integrate the blockchains, that would also mean they completely open up their publisher inventory, which they are sometimes even now not able to do, even with an NDA or something. So it's a nice concept for now, but
yeah, it sounds very transparent, but it doesn't give you much information, right? Because I mean, if you have basically you have P2P transactions, and if you have two people, I mean, what is going to happen? Nothing, right? So there's not much happening there. And if you have companies complying to transparency and actually being open to what they do, where where the ads are showing, where we actually getting our users from, this is actually much more valuable, I think, personally, at this point of time. Maybe in 20 years is a thing, I don't know, or next year, who knows? Yeah.
I hate to do this because you just used this word, but transparency is another word that that people, when they hear it, they go, "Oh yeah, that's good." What does a partner have to do to justify calling themselves transparent in your opinion?
Publisher names or bundle IDs at least, I would say.
Yeah, publisher names and like location of the ad. Where is the ad being shown?
Yeah, it's pretty much. Yeah, pretty much the same. Yeah, and maybe the big ones actually, like the big guys, maybe also showing where all the touches are happening. That's also another thing, perhaps.
Sure.
But also in terms of the degree of numbers they can show. We talked about impressions, clicks, and all that stuff.
Yep.
It needs to be transparent how they trigger those things.
Things like when they fire what time they fire the click
so,
and so on. Yeah.
When the classic case of clicks being fired, even though there were impressions or these kind of things. So it's good to see that the inventory is clear and you see all the names, but you obviously want to make sure it's transparent how they then attribute certain values next to it.
Also, in certain transparency in terms of the waterfall is also very. It's very helpful because usually you're like, let's say you're bidding $2 on your campaign, you talk to your account manager and they're like, oh, you're positioned third in the waterfall. But if you bid a bit more, you're going to be second. And we're like, how much is a bit more? Is it 5 cents? Is it 50 cents? Or is it $1 more? Like, how much more do I have to bid? And that is very appreciated sometimes. Some networks do that, and it's very helpful because it helps you scale, and you feel like this person goes beyond to help you and is interested by your account.
And maybe also be transparent or at least honest with other advertisers or clients they worked with or are working with, because we recently also saw some nice case studies with one of our companies underneath, and we just asked each other, so what about this case study? Is it really the truth? And we're like, we never did this case study. I mean, just so it's really just same stuff, just telling that you work with those clients. Ask those clients. Very often they're just open to tell you, yeah, we never worked with them, or we did a test with them for 1 week, didn't work out, but They have your logo on their sales stack.
So if you saw a testimonial on a website, you might well chase that up with the person who apparently said it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and be careful with what you read, because sometimes, I've read stuff like, oh yeah, ROAS increased by 2,000%. But what was the base? Like, was it maybe ROAS was like 5%, so the 2,000% increase was still not good enough. Sure. It makes it look amazing, but actually it's just fluff. Sure.
Gentlemen, I would love to sit here all day and get your names wrong for the rest of time. But unfortunately, we're out of time, and there's a lot more bullshit on stage. There's a lot more great speeches coming up on stage today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to clap at these men to thank them for coming and spending their time with us today. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I think you should leave the stage, yeah? And I'll follow you. Thank you, everybody.